Um, Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. I'm Claire Fenello. I'm the Executive Director at EVCOM, and I'm delighted you could join us this afternoon. This afternoon's webinar is called The State of Webinars. There's a lot of webinar action happening today. As usual, could I ask that if you have any questions, you put them in the question box on the side, and I will either feed them to the speakers as we go along if appropriate, or I'll wait to the end and we can cover them then. But before we get cracking, could I also just flag a forthcoming webinar in 2 weeks' time on the 24th of February, where we will be looking at the implications, impacts and issues around Brexit for the event and film industries. More details to follow on that, because we're trying to get as up-to-date info as we can, but we're looking 24th of February, the usual time, 4 o'clock. Okay, so we'll go straight into the content. Just to flag, it's a slightly different format this time. We have two speakers who will be doing more of a presentation, as it were, and then we'll be looking at questions at the end rather than a panel session, which is what we've been doing before. But we have with us today a company called TwentyThree. TwentyThree is a video marketing platform that empowers marketing teams to integrate and add video to their marketing strategy. Thousands of marketeers are using TwentyThree to increase their results and gain the missing 50% of website data through video marketing. So there's a lot of data involved, and the two speakers here are going to talk you through all of that. But as a business, TwentyThree is in high growth mode and has doubled revenues in the last year, so they really are on a trajectory. We're delighted to say that TwentyThree is also an EVCOM partner, and we have been using their platform for a number of our events over the last 6 months. So we're delighted to have them with us today, and giving them an opportunity to talk about the wonderful advantages that this system can offer. So we have with us Jeremy Stinton, who's head of UK, and Jeremy's remit is to drive UK expansion, building a satellite team. This country head role includes acting as senior enterprise account executive for the UK headquartered clients as well. We also have Casper Pedersen, and he's based in Copenhagen in Denmark, and he's a partner manager and video marketing strategist, and his mantra is, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. For the last couple of years, he's worked on educating agencies and marketeers all over the world to believe in this same mantra, especially when it comes to video. So they're going to take you through the presentation now, and I am handing you over to, I think, Casper?
I think actually Jeremy is going to...
Yes. Jeremy, beg your pardon. Okay, Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Claire, and good afternoon to everybody joining. So just very quick blast through TwentyThree. Claire's done a fantastic job of sort of laying the groundwork there for TwentyThree and who we are. So offices around the world, as you can see from the slide. We're now upwards of 400 customers, ranging from small one-man bands, but as you'd expect, most of our clients are sort of big enterprises, sort of global law firms, people like that. So just to give you a flavour of some of the brands that we work with, I'm sure there's plenty there that you recognise. And just to give you a little bit more flavour around the products that we have within our platform, there's the video marketing platform, which allows you to upload, manage, and indeed measure and get really deep data insights into video content, embed video content on the website and share out to social media and all that kind of good stuff. There's the TwentyThree webinars product. I guess needs very little introduction. It's what we're using here today. And of course, that works hand in hand with the video marketing platform. So anybody that's registering for a webinar, for example, you're able to then see what video content they've watched on the website and elsewhere. So you get that really good deep data picture. And of course, we have the TwentyThree personal product, which is all about helping people create video content on their laptop, recording themselves, recording their screen, editing that together quickly, and then sharing that on the landing page, or indeed downloading that content. But anyway, sort of less about TwentyThree, and I'm going to hand over now to Casper, who's going to take us through the first poll and give us a little bit of context to webinars.
Yes, we would like to know a little bit about you. So, of course, who and what, of course, of these polls. So I hope now the poll will be activated, and by here you should have the chance of actually voting if you think one of these descriptions actually describes best your organization. So are you an event agency? Are you a video? Are you a film agency, or a digital agency, a communication agency, or something or others? That's of course what we would like to know. So I will actually close down here and see if we can see any polls that should have been activated here. So I will wait a little bit here to see if we can see the answers. But yeah, we of course give you this poll just to get to know our audience a little bit better. So we would, of course, if you look at your in the top of where you also can chat. So here in this bar, you will actually have the chance of voting. So yeah, we will look forward for that, and I will follow up on the vote on the polls when it's done. So of course, I want also to take a deep further into more like what we are in here to talk about today, because I think a good place to start is by talking about webinars in general, because actually, if we look at webinars, as you also can see here, it's actually a word which started back in the 90s, where it actually a place where you of course can do a seminar, a presentation on the Ethernet, but of course it also allows participants like you today to be in different locations to actually watch and hear the presenters ask questions and also answer polls as we do right now. One of the things that we of course have seen, and now everyone knows the word, is that actually it has been very overlooked, because some of the best brands like Tesla and Apple actually use this for sharing and launch all of their new products. So actually, historically, it has been something that have been in the digital events for years, and someone will also say ages. But we have actually seen a very, very huge, of course, expansion and increase in this as we see now. I would like to show you an example. Actually, it's from before COVID. So this is from a marketing automation system called Marketo. And as you can see here, they have actually invested not a lot of money in paid advertising, but what they have done instead, they have done a lot of manpower, resources have put into this to actually, as you see today, we are 3 people, and we also have Amelia sitting and switching in between the cameras, and we have done a lot of things to prepare ourselves. But at the end, it really shows that with webinars, you can actually generate a lot of money in the pipeline for a low investment. Of course, still, as I said, resources are an investment. But here it shows that they don't have to put the same money in to actually, now, as you can see, I do this from home. Jeremy the same, and Claire and Amelia as well. So actually the setup can be done very cheap. But at the end, it's all about generating a lot of opportunities, which you also see in this case with Marketo, which have generated for more than almost 40 million USD worth of pipeline. So there's a lot of things, and actually also if we go back, we can actually see that they created more than 1,000 opportunities by doing all of these webinars they have done, which if you compared it to display ads or blogs, it's actually pretty high compared to this. And we also have, of course, seen that that there has been a huge increase in this. So if we actually take a look into how we have seen the webinars and numbers of webinars which have been produced from our platform, we can also see that there has been, of course, an increase since March, where this COVID, of course, started. And actually what we say internally is that we have felt this world of webinars have matured like 7 years in just 7 weeks, which was the spikes you saw in the beginning. And then, as you can see, it actually are in a place where I think like it's more back, as you can see in January and February, where it looks like it's back on where we were in April and May as well. So we can actually see that still a lot of people are using webinars. And of course, what is really important is that we can still see a lot of people is signing up. So actually last month was the highest number of registrants that we have seen across our webinar, which also shows that maybe it could be the new normal. I don't know, but at least it continues to grow and people are still signing up for watching webinars as you are today. So actually, for this, I also want, if it's possible, to activate a new poll, which is what you believe the future of webinars is. I think you, of course, can hear what my prediction is, but I would love to hear what you see and how you feel the future of webinars will be. So you will get the chance of vote if you think that it will be that actually it will be replaced by in-person events, because of course we miss people, and if you think that of course this will that we will go back to where we were before, then maybe the first one is the right. Second is, of course, you still believe that webinars will be a crucial way to reach an audience in the future, or you believe that it will become a fusion with the in-person event in a hybrid format. I'm really keen I'm curious to hear what you think about this, because it's of course something where I know a lot of you have a lot of knowledge, which will be nice to see. And
okay, Casper, while you're waiting for people to respond to that, can I just let you know what the results of the last poll were?
Yeah, exactly.
Because Amelia is struggling to reveal them.
Okay.
Event agencies 25%, digital agencies 0%, video production agencies 25%, and communications agencies 50%.
Okay.
And we've also had a message just to flag, your video feed is blocking the slides, so people couldn't see the graphs you were displaying because your image is over them.
Okay.
I don't know whether you can slide that over at all from your end.
Yes, of course I can. So I can just move them just so they can see them. I know it could. Now I think my designers will come after me, but I can share them again. So if you yeah, exactly. So if you see now, you can see that this is. Can you see it now, right? So
yep.
Now you should be able to actually see that the amount of webinars. This is the graph I was trying to show. That of course we saw a huge spike in the beginning, but actually we still are in the same momentum and still can see like it's the same number of webinars people are producing now as we saw in the beginning of COVID. So still a lot of people are producing webinars, and also here the registering. So this means that a lot of people are still signing up. And yeah, I'm so sorry that my head was was blocking this, but this actually shows that we have the highest spike and the highest numbers of registrant across all of our of course clients last month. I hope this was better, and I'm so sorry that my head was blocking.
That's perfect. It's fine now. Thanks, Casper.
You're welcome. And yeah, and then of course I also saw, of course, that a lot of you are believing in the hybrid format, and I will really look forward. I also believe there is a great way of combining both in person and these online webinars as well. And actually, I will let the word over to my good friend and colleague, Jeremy, who will give you a broader, like I've showed you some of the stats about what we see in the current use of webinars, but also Jeremy will give you much more knowledge on a lot of other important stats as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Casper. So every year we run this, what we call the State of Webinars. So this is a bit of insight into the industry. So today I'm going to take you through some of that content. We will make the link available after this, so you can deep dive into that publication and gain all of the sort of insights that are in there. But I'll just give you a sort of high level of some of the things that we've discovered in the last sort of 12 months. So a little bit of the why. Of course, we are a webinar platform ourselves. So, we are interested in what the market's doing. And of course, this all directly feeds into all of our product and what we're doing and the conversations, of course, we're having with customers. In terms of the how, now what we do is we go out to several hundred marketeers. Typically, they are larger enterprise type clients, so those with more than 1,000 employees. But of course, there is a number of sort of smaller organizations as well, and they're a spread of our clients and others that we're talking to get to these insights. And as I say, this is something we do annually, so we can compare year on year. Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, and given the context that Casper has talked about, 45% of the people responding are now new to webinars this year. So we've seen this massive growth within webinars in the last year. And indeed, nearly a doubling of the organizations that are actually doing webinars. So this volume has increased significantly, and of course brought with it challenges for organizations adapting to this very quickly. And potentially, this is where agencies can actually come to their rescue. And one of the things, that we see quite a lot is people jump to do webinars very quickly, didn't always get them right. And there's a lot of organizations that still want to increase the professional output that they're creating and professionalize their webinars as we would talk about. So just to drill down into some more of the stats here. So, looking back to 2019, we've got around about a third running 1 to 5 webinars. But of course, as we go into 2020, those running a smaller number of webinars becomes very much the minority, and organizations, in the majority running 5 to 50. But actually, there's a third there running more than 50 webinars per year. Now, that really takes some doing as an organization to ramp up. Some have lent on their agencies, but some really need that support and still need that support. And there's an increased opportunity for that support. Now, it was, of course, interesting to get people's views on where they think this will sort of unfold as we go through the next 12 months. There's a clear bias there in the poll towards those running hybrid events. So, in-person component as well as those joining online. So, definite opportunity there for agencies to support that process. So let's drill down into actually what are people making? What's the content that actually people are creating here? Now, above everything, what comes through is the need and want to educate customers to both create that brand awareness and keep in the sort of image and in the mind of customers. And ultimately, then we're into generating leads, and this is a lead generation activity. Of course, in recent times, people haven't been able to get out to networking events and all of those sort of things. And build up the kind of relationships by other means. So really leaning on this as a method to generate leads. But of course, what we're able to do from that is operate very efficiently in the digital world. So, we're able to actually understand who's registering for a webinar, of course, and then understand actually how much of the webinar, for example, they've engaged with. And I'll talk a little bit more about analytics as we come towards the end of the presentation. Perhaps unsurprisingly, if lead generation is, a core part of what we're doing here, that actually marketeers and marketing teams are those that are sort of picking up the mantle here to drive webinars and taking responsibility for that. as well as, of course, internal comms folks, HR, and other dimensions. But primarily, it's marketeers that everybody's looking to drive these kind of programs. And of course, that then leads into actually who within the organization is on an individual basis responsible for this stuff. So, going back, there will be much fewer people involved, of course, in webinars. But, even now, only 41% have a dedicated person internally, or at least a dedicated team in some cases. So there's a big gap. And of course, if you're creating 50 webinars within your organization, that's a big ask on top of doing everything else that people are expected to do within a marketing team or similar. And again, opportunity to lean on agencies to support that part of the process. And indeed, I see, the growth of dedicated webinar people as really something that will become important going forward. People can't do this alone. And, if we look at what happened with social media, when social media kind of originally kicked off, then it would be some sort of assistance role, but now very much full-time roles, head of social media, etc., within an organization. And very much we see the same happening for webinars. So if we look at actually who's doing this, it's quite interesting. So, 91.5% are actually doing everything in-house themselves. So they're using tools like ours to actually run the webinars, and very few are actually leaning on external resources at the moment, just 6.6%. Again, herein lies a massive opportunity really to, as clients want to increase the professionalism of what they're doing, both to use tools like TwentyThree, for example, that can out of the box professionalize that experience, but also that opportunity for the agencies to really add value and start creating much more immersive online events and almost sort of TV broadcast like experiences for their clients. And what I do see, certainly going through last year, was clients had no problems gaining engagement on webinars at the start of the year, but actually coming towards the back end of the year, they were, or in some cases anyway, where they weren't getting the format right and they weren't speaking to the audience in the right way, or in creating engaging experiences, those audiences started to tail off. And of course, once you've lost that audience, then the opportunity is much harder to, it's much harder to drive them on. So just to wrap up on this particular slide, it's interesting to see that about half the webinars actually are done in collaboration with somebody else, with another stakeholder or partner or so on, and bringing in, of course, external people to speak on webinars, adding a lot of value. So I think a bit of a sort of personal mantra, as someone who's come from sort of video strategy, webinar strategy side myself, as a former agency owner, myself, very interested in the metrics and what's going on out there. But what we see is actually people focusing very much on vanity metrics. So things like number of attendees being up there as the biggest thing that people are measuring. Perhaps unsurprisingly, that's a reasonable measure of success. But actually, do we know whether they're engaged or not? Has that actually ultimately created value for the business? So, what we would always recommend, of course, is that clients are looking at how many qualified leads did they actually generate? If this is a lead generation exercise, what did that actually ultimately lead to? And ultimately being able to track that through to revenue. So you can say, well, we ran this series of webinars, and ultimately clients then are able to sort of track that all the way back to how much revenue was generated. And then, of course, for all of us within the chain, it makes it very clear the value that we're adding to the client in that process. So as you can see from the numbers there, only 23%, for example, are tracking this all the way through to sales and revenue. So big opportunities for clients to shift what they're doing there. And of course, the route to doing this is actually to integrate the webinar products with their customer relationship management databases, with their marketing automation system. So information is flowing directly from the webinar tool into the other systems they're using to track sales performance, marketing performance, and ultimately revenue further down the line. And only 25% are actually integrating this data at the moment, and obviously a smaller percentage are actually doing anything useful with that data once they've passed it all the way down the line. So I guess just as we come towards the end of this, good news, I guess, for all of us that ultimately 50% are expecting to spend more on their webinar programs as we go through this year. And some of the areas that they're expecting to spend money on, unsurprisingly, the promotion of these webinars. So whether that's promotional video content, small snippets from previous webinars, social media campaigns, of course, a wider content creation, and of course, the tools, know-how, and professional expertise to deliver these in a sophisticated manner. We keep talking about the era of audio and slides being over. As we've sort of demonstrated here today, we're into a world of cameras, mixing between different assets and all the rest of it. So 93% saying that actually these are becoming more like live video production. So this is more like a TV experience than the sort of webinars of old, ultimately. So I'm going to hand back to Casper at this point, and back to another poll, just to give some summary thoughts.
Yeah, so we want to hear, of course, what you see is the most interesting of what and relevant to you of what Jeremy just have presented. Like, is this the growth of webinars, or is it to see like case studies for webinars? Is it the resources of webinars, the measurements, or is it like the spending patterns that he just showed you by the end? I'm really curious to see what stats you find interesting and also relevant for you. So we will, of course, I hope the poll are activated now. So again, you had the chance of showing what you think. I will look forward to see the results. Oh, we can actually see that they like that you showed some measurement of webinars, and now we see someone also can see the benefit of the growth of webinars as well. Good. Okay, good. Yeah. So I assume also what we will do by the end is actually show one more example of this. Will more be like an example of how we normally see the flow for webinars. So this also could be a fun way to actually look into for your case, actually to think about what can you help your clients with, because this is the flows we normally, when we talk with clients, this is where we see there is a lot of opportunities, because as Jeremy said, for almost half of the ones we ask in the survey, so half of the marketeers, webinars is actually new for them. But again, 50% also said they want to spend more money on webinars in 2021. So there is a huge gap in the market right now. And this is why we normally use this, which we call the value-based approach, where we actually talk about what is the different flows that people want to go through, and also hear what kind of help does the clients at the end need. So if we look, of course, before you can do a webinar, you need to make sure that people actually are going to watch, because otherwise, of course, it will be a presentation online, but that will only be between Jeremy, Claire, and Amelia and I. Here we have participants also attending, which means, of course, we had to make some ads, some advertising. We had to do some LinkedIn posts. We have to send out emails, etc. And of course, this is also an area where I see a lot of people actually are underestimating how much effort they should put in on this before they actually can do the webinar, because otherwise it will not be, as Jeremy also said, it will not be worth all the investment and also the resources that you put into it. So that's why it's important, of course, to measure it, and that will be in the post flow. But also during the webinar, as you see now, it's set up in EVCOM's colors. So they have an unbranded design, they have a landing page, they have some reminder emails sending out, and also they have a whole workflow around this. We were also sitting and chatting. We have met, I guess, at least 3 or 4 times before this actually recording live. So there is a lot of technical setup as well to make sure everything is right. Also, as you can see right now, Amelia is sitting and switching in between us speakers, but also how we're presenting. So you will see slides, you will see me, or you will maybe see a combination of these. And then, of course, we have the whole post flow, which are also very, very underestimated. Like, what should we do after to make sure that the people who have attended also will be reminded for other webinars, or as Jeremy said, make sure that it will be aligned into our CRM system, so we know that someone will follow up on these, and we make sure we qualify, so we have a sales qualified leads and also marketing qualified leads as well, so we can make some conversions at the end. That is the purpose of what many of us are doing. So, of course, that will be normally the flow we will talk about. And I actually think there is a lot of things here where you can help as an agency. You can help them with structure, like plan everything that needed to go be recorded during the live, but also all the things that needs to be planned before and after. There is a lot of opportunities here. And then, of course, one of the things we also really believe in is, of course, like the future of videos and webinars in general. So what we see now is that in the 20s, there has been more and more job applications and also job titles where it says we are searching for a video marketeer, maybe a webinar program manager is also the new title we have seen growing a lot, and then also a video producer. So we see some of the same trends that we have seen in the 10th with the social media managers, in the zeros and in the beginning of this decade with a head of digital, and also in the 90s with the webmasters. So we really believe that video becomes a core change agent. So I truly believe in what you said in the beginning, like that we will find a hybrid format where video also will become part of the in-person events. But yeah, I think you know much more better around this than I do. But I really believe at least that video will become something also we will talk about when we are in the next couple of years, or are hopefully out of what we are in right now and don't have to do everything from home. So yeah, I think actually that's it. I don't know if you have any questions or yeah.
Okay. Well, I can jump in now if that's okay, because I've been listening quite carefully, and I've got a few things that I'd like to bring up if that's okay. So obviously from an EVCOM perspective, the whole future of a hybrid world is really, really important, because EVCOM is made up of event agencies and corporate film and brand film companies. So the hybrid activity is an absolute sort of perfect coming together of the two forms. So both parties need to understand the full capacity of webinars and video, and how the data can help their clients. But I suppose one of the things I would just like to question, because I know, Jeremy, at the very beginning you were talking about the research had been done principally with very large companies with over 1,000 employees, and sort of our core member tend to be much smaller companies, but they work with clients that maybe on that scale. Is there anything with the data that may have come out that would be different for smaller companies to have to think about, or is the data the data really, and it crosses all boundaries?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and the State of Webinars report, as you rightly say, purely is very much biased towards enterprise organisations. but yeah, absolutely. I guess arguably maybe the smaller organizations have smaller audiences and that sort of thing, and potentially have smaller budgets to create a really big kind of full-on interactive hybrid event. I think the hybrid event is very much in question as to exactly what the format of that will take, and indeed what what we'll be allowed to do, of course. And I was speaking to a client this morning, and they're already building a massive studio. So this is a global law firm building a massive studio that will take both a live audience and is fully equipped with screeners and cameras and that sort of thing. So those online can actually participate in that as well. But of course, that sort of thing is going to be out of reach of many of the smaller organizations unless they put big budget into hiring those kind of facilities.
Yeah, which is where maybe some of the specialisms and specialists will come into it, because clients more and more are going to see that the data is available, and therefore they will want to see it. So if you're an event organizer and putting together a hybrid event, you will need to find a way to be able to deliver that data and follow up on it. And if you started from the beginning, put it into your proposal so that you're promising that you'll be able to deliver on certain things. So it is going to require a slight change in direction for some companies, I think, as to how they pitch.
Absolutely, and as you rightly say, sort of putting their head on the block almost for setting out with the client as part of their objectives and KPIs at the outset exactly what are they looking to achieve. And how do we do against that? And of course, if they don't quite get the figures, then that opens a conversation as to, what can we do differently next time? It can always be built into a positive of actually what's the learning? How do we make sure we hit that KPI next time around? Rather than necessarily that being something for the client to beat the agency around the head with, of course.
It's interesting, because I know there are certain elements of our membership who have always felt that the data backing up the success of a campaign, be it a film campaign or be it sort of events or comms, the data backing it up has often not been sufficiently robust. And sometimes you've got by on a wing and a prayer. So this is interesting that this is all going to now be available. So I think there'll be winners, and then there'll be some who may struggle with some of this. So which takes me to my next question, which is all about upskilling. So I love that thing where you looked at the different decades, where you see the different the titles that became synonymous almost with that decade. I suppose one thing that's quite difficult, and particularly having come through what we've come through, is like, where does the onus lie on upskilling? Should it be companies training internally, or is it the responsibility of a lot of people now who might find themselves, made redundant or unemployed, to make sure that they upskill? And where do they go? How do they do it? Where do they learn?
Yeah, I think a good question. I actually think it is a combination, because it will be like, of course, as this is only what we see right now, and it's in the beginning, right? But we also see that a lot of people are trying to learn more in this space. So I actually think there is two ways of looking at this. Is of course people will become more curious. So this means they will look for someone who can help them. So that could be why they will go for the company and says, can we find someone who can help us externally, which normally is the fastest way to learn, right? And then there is, of course, the ones who are just curious themselves, who will go after this. And then maybe there will be a third one who says, okay, I can actually see a lot of applications says we need to do something, or I need maybe to send a job application where I use videos, right? That is also what we see in HR. A lot more and more are doing, and said you need to send a video so we can see and feel who you are, right? So I believe it is something in between, where it will be through, like, we see this demand just. I think it's better that it comes from the bottom and up than the opposite way around. So it is because people want to see videos. That's why we do it. There is also this data which says that 72% of B2B buyers wants to see video instead of reading a blog post, right? So I think it's better to see it from, and hopefully that will be how it will grow. It's because that will be the demands and the requirements. So again, I see it more from that perspective, if I have to give you an answer.
All right. Okay. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And it's fascinating that this webinar is followed on from the one we had 2 weeks ago about the televisation of events, because everything is now involving much more sort of live action and film action, you know, and it's all requiring a lot more technical skills, I think, than perhaps people were used to in the past. But I think one of the stats that you presented, which I found interesting somewhere, was that only 25% of, I think, was it clients or customers, or 25% use the data. So it's educating the clients, the end user, everybody to understand what the breadth of this offers and what it can do for their business.
Absolutely, and I think organizations really do struggle with data, and they struggle with, you know, who owns that data. They're not yet necessarily in the habit of consistently analyzing campaigns and activities in the same way. You know, I think there's a lot of lip service paid to that, but ultimately the reality is, and we see this, and the report bears this out, of course, that clients aren't yet doing that. And again, therein lies an opportunity for the agencies to actually kind of build in this look at the data within what they're doing, and taking the client through that process, and ultimately generating a lot of value for the client.
And also, just again, that person having that ability to analyze that data and in a creative way translate what that means in terms of a marketing strategy going forward. Because the data is the data, you know, it's numbers, and it's having a person who is able to understand the client's needs, the data, and how, you know, their skill sets can move that client on demonstrably using that data. So it is fascinating to see where it's going to go.
Absolutely, and having those individuals who can make the right sort of hypothesis that they can then either prove or disprove with the data, because as you say, you know, the tools give you good insights, but they don't give you all of the answers. You then need to draw out, okay, so why is this particular series of webinars doing particularly well, and why did this one flop? You know, is it the content? Is it the you know, is it the production value? Is it a mixture of both? Did we not advertise it correctly? You know, what actually is going on here? Absolutely.
Yeah, and I also think where it will actually help a lot is actually getting them to understand also what we can see here. For example, if we can see that if people will go, when will they like end their experience with watching the video, or like, so you can go in very deep on videos and then you can look at the successful video, then you can look at how have we done the storytelling, how have we set everything up, how have we filmed, and we can see, okay, they see it to the end. But this video, which is maybe it's the same purpose, but we have tried to do it in another way, we can actually start to do what we call A/B testing, right? We can try now compare videos and also compare webinars, where we can try different formats to try to see actually, okay, we can actually see people like this. Let's produce more of this instead of just guessing. And that was also part of what Jeremy said about the vanity matrix. Then go back and be more like knowing your audience at the end, knowing your customers, knowing and nurture them as well. I think that's a huge part, and that's of course where data can help a lot to take better decisions at the end. But again, that's back to my measure and my purpose.
Yeah, well, I would say, I mean, you know, I think there's probably a lot of organizations out there, very much like EVCOM possibly, who were using webinars as a means of engagement. And I have very much had my eyes open, and I'm now going to burrow into the data that we have collected over the last year, because I do think we can't, you can't keep on just doing webinars for the sake of engagement. There needs to be more purpose, and we've got to start using that data to make sure that we're targeting it correctly and giving people what they want. So I have learnt a very good lesson today, and I'm hoping some of our listeners will have too. As I mentioned earlier, this recording will be on our usual channels, and that will probably be available as of tomorrow lunchtime. But I would recommend that people do look at the link for the report, because then you can peruse that at your leisure and look at the data in a lot more detail, and maybe have a long, good, hard look at some of the webinars that you've been doing, and check that you're getting the most out of them, and that you're heading in the right direction going forward, and that you have the right staff in place to make sure they are doing what they should be doing. And I think with that, we come to the end of today's webinar. So I would very much like to thank our partners, TwentyThree, and they are Jeremy Stinton and Casper Pedersen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot.
And look forward to continuing working with you. Thanks ever so much. Bye for now, and look forward to seeing our regular listeners in 2 weeks' time for our Brexit webinar. Thank you, and good